Undisputed Wrestling Show at AngryMarks.com. We got a guest tonight who really needs no introduction if you followed the sport of professional wrestling. Close personal friend of mine for a long time, Mr. Jason Knight. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be here finally.
It's great to have you, buddy. And you and I could go on all night about stories of traveling together and the Royce C. Prophet era, but I'm going to be generous for a while, and I'm going to pass it around to get started. And I'm going to let Zane go first, then we'll roll up with Drew Skills. I have a couple questions for my friend Jason Knight.
Sure.
All right, Jason, thank you so much for coming on. You let me give you a real good introduction. You've been around the professional wrestling business since, 1984? You've major stints. Most of our listeners will know you from your time in Extreme Championship Wrestling, where you did hold the ECW World Television Championship. How did you get your start in professional wrestling?
Well, actually, my start was in 1977, but it was
oh wow!
Before that, it's 1968 in England. We're talking United Kingdom, where my father was stationed. He was a politician, and he loved watching wrestling. So we used to watch it once a week, along with Hammer horror films and all that. I mean, it was a good time. And I said to myself, my gosh, this is something I would like to do. So in 1968, 69, I'm like 6 or 7 or something like that. I don't know. In any case, when I got to the United States in the 70s, I found out that there was a way to get into professional wrestling, that they did have gyms available in the New York, Brooklyn, Queens area, but pretty much you couldn't get licensed. So I knocked around there for a while, from 1977 till 80 something, and then discovered that you'll never get licensed by the State Athletic Commission unless you're being trained or have been trained and get a letter of recommendation by a trainer. It would have to be someone lucrative that has been there and done that. So that's what I did. I went to Johnny Rod's, and then later on I went to Bobby Bald Eagle, and just what it is.
So at that time, it was really hard to get into the business. You said you went to Johnny Rod's, but how did what did you have to do to prove yourself for him to be able to train you?
Well, I guess a nice fat check of $1,500 to begin with. Because absolutely, the best guys in the business are businessmen. And I never went in there saying, I wrestled before. I went in there like it was day one, and so there was really nothing I had to prove. I just, had to listen, learn, and, keep my eyes and ears open. That's all.
Well, very cool. I'm going to pass it along to the Heroes and Legends champion, Drew Skills. Drew, what do you have for Mr. Jason Knight?
Hey, Jason, thanks for coming on, bud. I really appreciate it. The first question I have is, do you watch the current product?
No, I'm afraid I haven't watched in quite a few years. I see a clip here and there that is on internet, and most what I see I'm not really crazy about, because it has changed so much from professional wrestling to sort of like a very athletic circus act. And I always say that I never intend to hurt the feelings of the performers, because they're taught to do what they're taught to do, and they don't know any better. They didn't start when we started back 30 plus years ago, or even 20 years ago. So the product for the past 10, 15, even 20 years has gone down a lot, and I've not watched. It truly doesn't interest me. It's just not what it was, and for people like me, I don't think it's up to par to the true men and women of professional wrestling back in the day.
Well, yeah, I haven't been in not nearly as long as you have, or when you guys started at Q either. I've been doing this crazy kooky thing for about 15 years, and I always like to kind of get a feel for it. I know it's changed a lot even since when I started. And I like to get a kind of feel on how you guys feel about the changes and such in the business.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like there aren't quite a few young people of this, new generation that get it, but it wasn't like back in the day. We were just getting weeded out, and they didn't really care about getting your money and training you, and then sending you to K&H to get your stuff. I mean, you really had to be, the trainers truly believed in the final product that they would send out there. That would represent our business for the next, 10, 20 years. That's how it was looked up on. Now it's just looked up on, get as much money as you can and, teach them how to jump around and high fly and all that, and, get 5 years out of it, get your name into the books for, the only company right now, the WWE and whatever. And then, you're the guy that made this one and that one and that one and that one, Back then it wasn't like that. It took a long time to prove that you could actually have a match. Or actually be carried in a match. First you had to be carried in a match. Good enough for that. And not, in a match.
Right, yeah, it was definitely a more protected business back then for sure. So you got your start with Johnny Rods. Where did your career take you?
I went to Johnny Rods, then shortly after that I went to Bobby Bald Eagle. And, I liked the style he taught. It was very, international. And what I did was, I went pretty much directly to WCW in 1987 or 88, I'm not sure. And by some chance, one of the wrestlers, Dave Sierra, didn't show up, and I took his place, wrestling the entire finishing the loop with working with Mike Rotundo. And that's, pretty much my entrance into the big leagues at that time. And, then, I went on to WWF at the time, and obviously, I knew Paul Heyman from going back and forth, and he hired me in '93 for ECW.
Hey Jason, you know what I was a big fan of, Jason? The blonde haired Jason Knight from the early WWE years.
No, I think that was like WCW.
Oh, was it? It's funny. I never knew that. I saw you in a match. I was watching some old film, because that's all I really watch. And I saw you in WCW, and I'm like, they didn't even get your name up there. I'm like, that's Jason. And I'm like, he's got blonde hair. I never knew that.
Well, it was quite popular back then. Everybody did it.
Oh, well, when I got in Hawaii, they said, are you willing to dye your hair blonde? I said, I'll dye it orange. I don't care, whatever you want. So, hey, Jason, I was going to tell the guys about a funny road story we had one time. I'm pretty sure you remember this. There's me and you and Tom Pizzati and Cicero. We did a show in New York, I think in Brooklyn or somewhere, and we went to Scores afterwards.
Right.
And that's a gentleman's club in New York City, very clean, straight up. And, of course, the great thing is Pizzati was buying, but we left there and we were going to drive from New York City to Baltimore, and you're in the back seat behind me, I think. Cicero's in the front, because he would always tell everybody he got car sick. He had to ride in the front, which was a work, I found out years later. And Tom Pizzati in the back. And I fall asleep, and I wake up just about ready to hit this median on 95, going about 70 miles an hour. I yank the car to the side. Those two wake up and start screaming. When they stop, Jason leans up extremely calm, and he goes, "Hey, Q, if you'll stop in the next rest area, I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee." Unflappable. Everybody else in the car is screaming. My heart's racing through my chest, and Jason's just as calm as can be. I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee.
Perhaps I didn't realize that it wasn't that time yet.
I guess I didn't realize it as fast as you did. You know, but geez, funny times. We had some good times on the road. You know, here's an interesting thing. I think you probably remember the first time we met. It was at a Del Rio Spellbinder show in New York City, and I got there late, and they said run in the ring and take a super kick from that guy. That was like 20 or 21 years ago. I storm in, get the super kick, take the bump, go in the back. Hey, Jason Knight, nice to meet you. I like to see, you know, what's funny is like to see the guys, a lot of guys these days to go over a thing in the back, and all of a sudden they got to run in, not know somebody, and take a spot from them. I think it'd be interesting to watch.
It was funny because I remember you ran in, and it was, you know, like I think I was like clearing the ring or something like that.
Right.
Tom Casati comes over, and I'm like, okay, this wasn't, you know, planned, obviously, you know. You're like, go in there, you know. and I see this guy that looks like a barroom bully. Like, and then I saw cue ball karma. That's great, you know, because, you know, it's like when he plays pool and he beats people up, you know. And the only thing that was missing was like a, you know, a cigarette or a cigar out of your hand, you know, like Busick. But in any, yeah, you know what I mean? Just had that demeanor. And I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do? And you know, just, and we didn't even say it was like body language. And it wasn't even like a super kick. It was like one of those hands-free, hey, don't, you know, no dirty thoughts. Hands-free, insecurities.
Oh, right, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it was like, you know, just, you know, jumping insecurity. That's, you know, that's what it was. And, you know, and I just remember your face in slow motion, you know, because you're looking at it, you know, your eyes to the side, and it comes and just like touches you gently as a mother would kiss its baby, and you just went, boom, took a nice big bump for it, you know. And then, you know, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was neat. It was so easy, and then of course, you know, all the road stories with Tom Pizzati and stuff. But I wanted you to talk about, you know, you wrestled for WCW, you wrestled in the old WWF, you've been to Japan. I mean, what was your favorite place to be?
I think WCW would have been it if I'd stayed there, and obviously ECW would be the second. Probably the last of it all, WWFE, whatever they want to call it, because it was just a whole different. It was like an ugly aura, you know. It always smelled. It was almost like as it smelled when you threw a stink bomb in there, you know. Everybody was like you know, in a WWF locker room, you could always cut tension in the air with a knife. I don't know. I mean, you've been there. I don't know if you've, you know, but every time it was like there's this tension you can cut with a knife, you know, and barely, you know, even if it's really sharp, it's like, you know, this tension was just so thick, you know, to me. And, you know, it was just, you know, you had these different makeshift offices. You know, here's Shawn Michaels doing a promo here for the next 3 hours, you know, and this one over there for the next 4 hours, and this one over there, and this is Vince's. And there were all these makeshift, you know, it was very much like a movie. It's like, oh my God, you know, if you don't blow Hitch, you know, you're not going to get into Psycho. You know, you always felt like that. I mean, it was a very, very uncomfortable environment, but a great achievement just to be there. WCW, I think, being, you know, the Crockett promotion baby thing, right?
You know,
was always more relaxed, and you had these guys that came in, you know, like let's say the Southern boys, right? That are not like the skyscrapers, but they're being treated the same way. And, you know, one night they would win, the other night they would not, you know? I mean, it was like, the show was more like on a realistic level, you know? It was very, very, relaxed. There was no tension. There was no, you go to the ring, practice this, and you know, like it is, you know, with, WWE. You know, you go there, you practice this, and how, yeah, because if you get it one thing wrong, and, you know, immediately you're put in a position where you are, you're going to fuck up,
Right.
But then, it's how you screw up and how you cover it, and then they admire you and they pat you on the back when you cover it, But if you don't cover it, oh my God, they're all over you like a bunch of those fucking African wild dogs. Yeah,
But yeah,
WCW wasn't like that. ECW was great in the beginning, and I will always say it, and I'm very grateful for it for the first few years, and then it just turned very dirty.
Yeah.
It was predetermined. ECW was predetermined from the very beginning not to last more than 10 years. All it was meant was for Paul Heyman and his buddies, his several buddies that are doing real well right now, to enhance themselves in the business, to get office jobs in the WWE, here or there at TNA and all that. That's all it was. And, I'm not putting a blame on those guys because everybody needs to take care of themselves. But they're all cahooted. I'm sorry. They all cahooted, and I'm not going to back down from it because they know deep in their heart. They were, first of all, most of those guys, kids, Heyman and all of them, they came from rich families, so they could afford, not making money on the road and fucking off. We couldn't afford that, and we were putting ourselves, through a lot of risk, and night after night and all that, and being promised, like for instance, out of 15 pay-per-views, I was paid only 2. So
wow,
what the hell? How fair can that be? And
yeah.
then for all the other merchandise and this and that. So when you're owed a lot of money and you're running, you're running around and making a good salary. Don't get me wrong, a good salary, but not nearly as deserving as what you earned and what you've done for the company and for everybody. And, put people over and just sometimes even in embarrassing ways and all that because, Paul's always like, would you rather be digging ditches? And I said, well, no, I wouldn't rather be digging ditches, but, you could be a little more kind to me. Oh, yeah, it's coming up, you're loyal, And then every time, you get, it's like, he could work a worker.
Right.
Coming up, and I'm like, you know what, maybe it is. Maybe I'll catch him one of a day. So.
Yeah, that's it's funny you talk about the tension in WWE. When I first got up there, when Tom Brady got us up there, when we wanted to sell Sincere, man, you walked in that locker room. We're talking like 96, 97. And when you went in that locker room, because WCW was starting to take over in the rankings, and WWF was losing money. They weren't making a lot of money. They were cutting contracts on guys. Man, I can tell you that you're exactly right. You could cut the tension in the air with a knife. And I don't know. I think part of it was because, when you came in, they looked at you like, is this the guy that's going to take my job? Or everybody was so miserable. I remember I knew Jim Neidhart before I went up there. So when I went up there, I walked into the locker room where Hearts were. And I said, hey, Jim. And he said, hey, come here. And he introduced me to everybody. And he's like, you can get dressed in here with us. And man, it was miserable. I mean, guys were just blatantly unhappy. And I think the writing was on the wall that, some stuff was going to go down. And, they struggled. I mean, they cut Brett's contract. He went to WCW. I mean, it was really just, it was super uncomfortable there in the late 90s. Super uncomfortable.
Let me just give you this interesting story because, something like my first, like I said, my first WCW experience, right? And it was in the Keys in Florida. And I went there to hang out with a girl I knew. I knew they were going to be there, WCW. I knew Gary Capetta. Gary Capetta said, come to the show. And I said, oh, good. I'll come and, I'll have my gear always in a car no matter what.
Of course.
Of course. I mean, it's like, just come to the show and I'll introduce you to a few people and all that. Great. So it does. All of a sudden, I'm just sitting there before the show, and he comes up to me and says, hey, Jason, Kevin Sullivan wants to speak to you. And I'm like, okay. So Kevin comes up to me, and he looks me up and down and said, he doesn't ask me. He turns to Capetta. He goes, can he work? And Gary says, yes, you can. You know, I mean, otherwise I would have just, you know, not said anything. He goes, you know, kid, you get your gear? You know, I said, yeah. I'm like, well, run and get it. So I got, you know, so I got it. And one of the greatest experiences that I had was, you know, this is way before the show, and now I'm looking for a locker room to change, and I see this door where it's kind of dark, you know, and I open the door, and there sitting Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, you know, like the Horseman guys at the time, and I'm like, oops, I'm sorry, you know, so he goes, no, you know, please come in. And Ric Flair says, no, please come in. And Arn, you know, come in. You know, I said, oh, my God, you know. And I'm looking for a chair. Ric Flair gets up off his chair and slides a chair to me. You know, I says, no, I'll get another one. And then, you know, they were like asking me, well, where are you from? You know, are you, you know, this and that. Kind of like just asking me. I'm like, no, you know, I'm just here, you know, visiting. I've been working for a while, you know, for a few years. And, you know, now I'm just, we'll see what happens. So later on that night, I see that I'm working with Mike Rotundo, but Mike is nowhere to be found because I don't know if he was running late or if he was somewhere else. So here comes the time. They're like, okay, it's so many minutes before your match, the match prior to you ends. Get into a position, you know, you need to go. And I'm like, well, you know, I haven't spoke to Mike Rotundo, whatever. Then finally, you know, maybe like a minute before that, I see this big dude coming out, and I'm like, oh, that's Mike Rotundo. And of course I knew who he was, and I go up to him, I say, hey, you know, I'm Jason, you know, we're wrestling tonight. He said, okay, you know, I'm like, you know, is there anything? There was, no, I'll call it a ring. And by that time, the two guys are back, you know, through the curtain, our music hits. And, you know, we go out, and I didn't even know the finish and whatever. It's almost like in slow motion in my mind that said, you know what, buddy, this is your big try. This is your tryout in life. All the years you've been trained, if you can't handle this, then you really, truly do not belong in a business. You know, not like, oh, he wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't, you know, no, this is it. So what do you do? And it all keeps, you know, going back to you relax and you remember your training, remember your training, remember your passion. This is all good. You got 15,000 people screaming, yelling all around, and, you know, there's an entire WCW office watching this match, but it's going to be okay, you know. And the referee, and I forgot who it was, you know, whether it was Randy Anderson or, you know, he just walks by and he says, the finish is airplane spin. I said, thank you, you know. And we just went through a match for about, you know, 15 minutes, and then he just threw me off, never even called anything. You know, it's almost like body language. I knew it was airplane spin and threw me down and all that. And, you know, that's how, that was my introduction to WCW, and it was a very sweet one, you know.
Wow.
It really is, because it was just something that, it wasn't like, sit here, now you got to remember this. Move to the left, you know, and I move to the right. You're going to fuck up my move, my finish, my spot, you know.
Right. Right. They put you out there and let you work and evaluated you from there, which is awesome. Hey, listen, you're listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show at AngryMarks.com, and we're talking to my friend Jason Knight here, the sexiest man alive. And I want to throw it back over to my partners Zane and Drew Skills to ask Jason a couple questions. I don't want to hog the old conversation, which I usually get blamed for doing when it's somebody on the show that I know.
Hey, Jason, I know I follow you on Facebook. Can you let our listeners know how they can follow you on social media?
Well, pretty much Facebook. I mean, that's it. I don't really have many other available sites or options.
Okay, so that's Jason Knight, Knight, on Facebook. You'll if you search him, then you'll see a handsome shirtless man with a goatee and a hat on in the profile picture. So look for him on there. Earlier in 2015, you talked about some health issues on Facebook. How's your health doing now?
He's doing fine. has been taken care of because, it was something, minor, thankfully caught in time. And it was something that was pretty much hereditary. It sort of runs in the family, and it usually hits like one spot on the body. It's almost like a little spot, almost like a little mole or, like a birthmark type looking thing, and then it starts itching and tickling, and, once it starts doing that, you need to take a look at it, because if you remove it on time, it doesn't spread.
Awesome.
Well, and Jason, your old tag team partner, Just Incredible, is actually wrestling what he says will be his last match this coming weekend, this Friday night in New York for Pro Wrestling Syndicate, and he's going to be taking on another guy that you're familiar with, Tommy Dreamer. What do you think about Just Incredible lacing up or hanging up the boots after this weekend?
Well, I think it's, in my opinion, way too early, but, perhaps he decided that he wants to explore other avenues, and perhaps, he's got something in the making that can be grander than what he had done. I think he made something out of himself and, has a great career and battled a lot of demons, won some, lost some, and still keeps going. Perhaps this is, his way of becoming himself, and I don't know. It's always hard to tell because I've seldom come to a conclusion that I wanted to quit. Even it's, I'm going to be 52 in December, and it's, a lot of people say, oh gosh, time, and I'm like, I don't feel like time. When I feel like the time has come, then I probably should. But, unless I feel it, unless it's there, unless something is looking, and pointing a finger at my face and saying, I don't see, why a number should determine someone's status in any business, unless obviously, physical health. I'm not sure, I think that, for how he had a great career and the way that he started and the way that he finished, if he's going to finish on top, if this is his top, let him do so, and because maybe he feels that, if he goes on, it's not going to improve or, get any better in certain ways. It's, perhaps he's tired of it. But, I can tell you, he had a great career. And he was one of the damn hottest things toward the mid-end of ECW. He really was. He went in there and he really, he kicked ass and took names. And
you were definitely a part of that with the Impact players. Did you, when that group started out, did you see them achieving as much success as they did?
Honestly, I wasn't happy with my position in the company, so I really didn't care. I showed up to work, and I did what I was told, and I didn't really socialize with those guys because, we weren't, trust me, we all weren't hanging out in ECW or PJ and I or Alliance and I, trust me, we were just working, I was hanging out with other people. So,
like Cue Ball Carmichael.
Yeah, exactly. Cue Ball Carmichael, those guys. Those are the guys I was hanging out with. It was, I respect a lot of those guys, but, we weren't like, friends or anything like that. We weren't buddies. So, at some point, I saw them going somewhere, but I always saw myself as the fifth wheel because it should have been those two guys and Del Marie and me not there because immediately is, something's wrong with the picture,
Okay.
To me, it was like a beautiful thoroughbred horse running perfectly, yet he has a camel hump, So I felt like a camel hump, it didn't, really, because, they didn't need me there, and I felt like Paul could have sent me, my own way to do something else. with another team or with another, with just a singles thing, would have been great to do something different. But, he didn't because he wanted to punish me and, mess with me and all that. So I just felt that I totally didn't belong, with the Impact players.
Why do you think that Paulie was trying to punish you?
Because we are both New Yorkers, and because we're both verbal, and because when you ask me a question of what I really think and expect one answer, but I give you another from my heart, that pissed him off, and I was like that from the very beginning. Not a pain in the ass, but he would ask, "What do you think of this?" And I would say, "This is great. This is great." It was like 90% of what he did was, "What do you think of this, Jay?" I said, "This is wonderful. This is great." And then the 10% that I thought was actual complete shit, he didn't like hearing that. I mean, just like the night the first ECW TV taping when I walked out on it. What was it? New Jersey.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that you know where you stand with Jason Knight right from the get-go, because he's not a yes man, and if you ask him a question, he's going to tell you exactly what's on his mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the point.
Right. It's the only way to be. You're honest. That's it.
Exactly.
True skills. You want to fire something on my buddy Jason Knight here on the Undisputed Wrestling Show at AngryMarks.com?
No, for sure. Jason, you and Q were talking a little bit earlier about the tension in the air at WWF, and I can tell you, it's been a little while, about 6 or 7 years since I've been around those locker rooms, but it's like walking on eggshells, and I got buddies that are there now that say the same thing. So, I don't think it's changed any. You guys were talking about ECW from the inside. What do you think? I mean, the ECW was so hot there for a little while. What do you think from the inside? Is there anything that could have been done differently for that company to have lasted any longer or to still be around?
Yeah. I mean, if they had plans for it to stay around, they definitely would have stayed around. But, like I said, ECW, once Paul Heyman took over, and, he had his, his friends, including Dreamer, Taz, Raven, those guys, I'm naming names, but come on, they know. It's not a big deal. They had to look out for themselves. They all knew that, they were going to go further in the business. So they pretty much used ECW as, as a stepping stone. That was their resume. Look, this is what we can do. And it took them less than 10 years to achieve what they did. And I mean, one guy, now Heyman is, from what I hear, big in WWE. Another guy, Dreamer, he's a big wig all over the place, the world, runs his own show, the schools and everything. Taz does what he does and very successful at it. So it just makes a lot of sense. But I saw it. I saw it coming, I saw it coming. I saw the whole thing that, those guys, they were like really, really at the top office boys, not Devon, but Bubba, yes. He definitely had a part in it. And again, I mean, they can be pissed off at me or do whatever they want. Good luck to them. But I'm just telling the truth. I'm even saying, hey, bro, I understand. You look out for your own ass, for your own fat ass, whatever, And you came out in the end, no pun intended. But, I'm just telling you that I will not sit here and lie and kiss butt because of, maybe the possibility. They maybe call me again, or, if I want to school, if I kiss their ass, my students are going to, you know what I mean? That type of a thing. That's not happening. The thing is that a company like ECW, they pulled and pushed angles. Now listen, over the period of 8 years, they pushed angles that should have lasted 20 years. I mean, these angles, because the angles are changing. It's like all of a sudden, this feud changes into another, and, it became worse in WCW, And that was like really the beginning of the end, where you could see that, it was like it was a suicide, it was a premeditated suicide by the office, and I truly believe that. I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, I cannot, because I believe that in my heart, and I saw. And there were certain conversations, you know, when they get a little sloppy, and the guys that were drinking a little bit drunk, you know, I saw it, you know, and I heard it. So I'm not whistling Dixie here, you know.
Right.
Yeah, believe me, you know. I mean, if I really opened up and told you, oh my God, gee, it was a wonderful place, very comfortable for me to be at, but towards the beginning of the end, I truly felt like somebody was cutting my throat to go to work. You know, it's like, you know, the ultimate job that you hate.
That's the worst.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those jobs are no fun to go to. So do you mind letting our viewers know, our listeners, I should say, not our viewers, but our listeners know what's Jason and I been up to since the wrestling business?
Still wrestling, still you know, doing seminars, personal trainer, training. Never really unglued from what I have been in my entire life. So, you know,
it's one of those things you can't shake, can't get rid of it. Once it gets in your blood, it's always there.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you guys have seen any pictures of Jason lately, but I think he's in the best shape of his entire career. I mean, you look phenomenal, man.
Oh, yeah.
Giving the 50-year-olds out there a shot. Give them some hope.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. God willing,
and
50 in December, and, you know, I'm going to get into even better shape.
Right. Well, you know, it's a funny thing. You were talking about Justin retiring and being too early. And, you know, one of the things that I always thought when I got into business, I got a chance to work with Stiver, who at the time was probably in his late 40s, early 50s. And, you know, the thing is that these guys had gotten so smart that, and I always say this, in the beginning of our career, we work with our body. And as we age, we start to work with our head. And these guys were so smart upstairs at taking, you know, a hold and working a hold, and maybe taking a bump or two, but making it mean so much in the ring. And, you know, that's the thing I think that a veteran who's been around 25 or 30 years still has left to teach the kids out there. And, you know, when we got into business, Jason, they didn't put us with other green guys. They put us with veterans, and that's how we learned. You know, those veterans led the dance, and we were out there for a few hundred matches getting the dance led, and then it came our turn to lead the dance with somebody that was green, and we could do it. But those days are gone, and that's kind of sad that, you know, there's not the veterans out there now that are getting a chance to work with these young green guys and teach them the business, because that's what we all came up on.
Exactly. It seems like everybody's trying to change the law of physics, or should I say the laws of physics. Everybody's trying to completely turn everything around, and, you know, whatever works. Oh no, you know, this is the way you do it now. And it's like in every business, including you know, I look at personal training and everything. There's so many different systems. They're just, you know, dangerous for other people out there because they're not going through basics, and, you know, they're just doing all this jumping around, and, you know, every time you're in risk of tearing a knee or whatever. It's the same way with the professional wrestling, because what they did was they opened up this whole floodgate to all these new individuals that are coming in. Number one, it's easy to get into the business. All you need is a few $100s and an idiot with a backyard and a ring, right?
Right.
Number two, you're exposed to all these so-called companies that own a school, and they put you on the show, and you're like, oh yeah, but I'm going to be on the show. I mean, back in the day it was different. You waited, you know, 6 months to a year before you were on a show. And now, you know, these kids, within a couple of weeks, boom, they're right there. And then, you know, number three, there's so many of these companies, so-called companies, that are running here and there, and all these kids putting their money together to buy or rent a ring and put on a show and hire these super indie or whoever, you know, it's just so oversaturated. It's way oversaturated, and that's what kills the business.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, it's I had a kid call a couple of weeks ago at my school, and he said, "How long is it going to take me to get trained?" I said, "You know, it's going to take probably a year. Sometimes it takes 18 months. Sometimes you're ready in 9." He goes, "Wow, I talked to a guy that said I'd be wrestling in 2 months." And I'm like, "Well, you need to go talk to him at his school, and then you need to come talk to me at my school." And he went and talked to that guy. Came up here. I said, "Listen, sure, I can teach you the physical side of the business as far as getting in there, locking up, you know, doing spots that make sense and taking a bump in the right places and things like that." I said, "But in order for you to be able to go out there in a ring and call everything from start to finish in the ring and to be able to have that make sense and be psychologically sound, that's what takes the other 9 months, is for me to drill that into your head day in and day out so that when you're out there and you're put on a spot, you can call that thing and make sense." Because at the end of the day, it's not your name on the back of your jersey. It's my name on the back of your jersey.
Exactly.
So, you know, and I think that's the thing, you know, like you said, anybody with a few bucks can get in it. It's not protected anymore. And everybody's a trainer. Everybody's got a school. There's guys that have schools out there that I know have not done anything more than a once a month indie show or twice a month indie show. And here's the thing. If you've never been to the WWE, if you've never made it on top, if you've never worked 100 nights a year, if you've never made a living at this business, how could you possibly teach a kid to do that? All you can teach them to do is what you did. And if all you ever did was work once or twice a month for your buddy who runs an indie promotion and not get paid, guess what? That's what you're going to train these kids to do, because you don't know anything else or you would have done it yourself.
Most definitely. I mean, I always said that the only people that have the right to call themselves professional wrestlers are the ones that have made a living out of the business over a good period of time, or at least a good partial supplemental income over a long period of time. Because, you know, many of the great ones had their regular jobs, and then, you know, they came to work and so on. But, you know, for a guy that just, you know, comes in there every 3 months and does something or whatever, or even every weekend, you know, in front of
Yeah, that's what, you know, your old friend Tracy Smothers and I were together this past weekend, and we were talking about that, saying, you know, unless you've lived it, and, you know, I had a 4-year period of time where I made tremendous money in wrestling, merchandise and everything else. I worked a lot. I had a school. I was getting paid good money to wrestle because I'd done some WWE stuff, you know, and that's only me who, you know, I consider myself to be sort of an independent guy most of my career. Yet I was able to have a 4-year stretch or 4+ year stretch where I was able to make a living in the wrestling business and do really well. And until you've done that and you've lived it and that's been your livelihood and you've lived it on the road, you just don't really have the same comprehension as somebody who had to do that for a living. I mean, it's just different when you live it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, I don't want to hog up too much of your time, but this is the Undisputed Wrestling Show at AngryMarks.com. I'm one of your hosts, Q-Ball Carmichael. We got Drew Skills, the Thriller, and we've got Zane Paisley, the Bearded Wonder. Guys, you got any questions you want to wrap up with my friend Jason Knight?
Hey, Jason, I did want to give a shout out to a friend of yours and Q-Ball that's listening tonight, Aaron Finzi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Aaron Finzi. He wanted to come on the show, and unfortunately we don't have a way for him to do that right now to say hi. So I told him that I'd pass that along. So hi, Aaron Finzi, and Q-Ball and Jason are listening right now. Jason, can you give out your social media information again? You're on Facebook as Jason Knight, Knight, and that's that's the best place that fans can connect with you?
That's the best way.
Okay. And so you're still out working. You got anything coming up that you want to let your fans know about?
Well, there's a movie in Dallas, Texas, in a few weeks that I will be talking about a little bit more as time goes on. So that's pretty much it for now. But you know, I'm looking out there for work and informing promoters in the Tennessee areas that you know, I'm available.
Yeah, and I can tell you from experience that it's a bonus to have Jason Knight on a show, because the guy is one of those guys that is a teacher in this business. I mean, he likes to pass on what he learned. He'll watch the young kids. He'll point out the things you did right. You know, go over some things you could have done different. But he's just one of the most genuine, polite, professional individuals I've ever had the pleasure of calling my friend in the wrestling business. And if you can get Jason Knight on a show, get him on a show. He'll improve your entire locker room. Get him in for a seminar. He's trained some really great guys in the business. He knows what he's doing. As I always say, he gets it. He's also a member of Cue Ball's Corner Pocket. And I love it when he posts something, because there's no BS. It is straight to the point, and you'll understand exactly what he's saying. So, Jason, I want to thank you for coming on the show, old friend, and we will chat soon.
Absolutely. Anytime. Let's do it.
Thanks for coming on, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Okay, good night.
Love you, brother.